After Christmas, the millionaire returned to routine when his contract bride was gone. The cabin wakes before Ethan does. Not because there is sound, but because the quiet has shifted. Morning light presses against the window, thin and pale, the kind that arrives without warmth. Ethan opens his eyes and stays still. He listens. There is no second breath in the room, no movement that is not his own. He sits up slowly, as if moving too fast might disturb something fragile. One side of the bed remains untouched, not messy, not abandoned, just unused. Ethan stands, pulls on a sweater without checking the weather, and steps into the cabin kitchen. The floorboard creaks in the same place it always has. The sound lands heavier now. This is not the first morning after Christmas, but it is the first morning that feels final. What happens when a routine remains, but the person does not? Ethan wakes earlier than he needs to. Not because he has somewhere to be, not because an alarm tells him to. He wakes because sleep no longer holds him once morning reaches the cabin. He moves through the space, quietly, careful with his steps, as if the cabin itself is still adjusting to having only one person inside it. The kettle goes on. The water heats. The motions are practiced. Exact. He measures the coffee the way he always has. The taste is right. The timing is not. He stands by the counter while the coffee cools, looking at nothing in particular. There are 2 mugs in the cabinet. He takes one. The other stays where it is. Not hidden, not removed, just left alone. After breakfast, he puts on his coat and steps outside. When he returns, the cold follows him briefly into the cabin before settling back into the walls. Inside again, he wipes the table. Once, then again. The second pass is unnecessary, but he does it anyway. He straightens a stack of books that has not moved since yesterday. One book slips slightly out of line. He notices. He pauses. He leaves it where it is. Later, something small does not happen. A habit he always keeps, one that usually happens without thought, is skipped. The moment passes. He does not correct it. Not because he forgets, because it no longer serves anything. The quiet presses differently now. It is not shared. It does not respond. Ethan sits by the window, coffee untouched, watching light move slowly across the cabin floor. He does not reach for his phone. He does not check the calendar. He stays where he is, present but not settled. The routine keeps him upright. It gives the day shape, but does not answer the questions beginning to form beneath the surface. He is steadier than he was yesterday. Still, something waits just beyond what he is willing to name. And the morning moves on, unchanged, leaving Ethan to decide how long routine alone can hold him before it asks for more. The next morning arrives the same way. Light enters the cabin slowly, touching the edge of the table, the corner of the rug, the back of the chair Ethan did not push in the night before. Nothing announces itself. Nothing asks for attention. Ethan wakes before the light reaches his eyes. He sits up, waits a moment, then stands. There is no hesitation. No checking the clock. He moves as if the order of things has already been decided. In the kitchen, the kettle goes on again. Water heats. Steam rises, quiet and familiar. Ethan measures the coffee carefully, the same amount he has always used. He pours the water and waits. He does not reach for the second mug. The coffee is strong. Correct. He takes one sip, then another, standing by the counter instead of sitting down. When he finishes, he rinses the cup immediately. He does not leave it to dry on the rack like before. Outside, the air is colder than yesterday. Ethan pulls on his coat and steps into the morning without pausing. His walk follows the same path as always. The ground is firm. The sound of his steps is steady. There is no need to match anyone else's pace, so he does not adjust it. Halfway through the walk, something changes. Ethan stops, not because he is tired, not because he is distracted. He stands still, looking ahead, as if he has reached a place he did not intend to reach today. After a moment, he turns back. The walk is shorter than usual. Back inside the cabin, he sets his coat down, then moves it again. The hook he normally uses remains empty. He chooses a different one, slightly farther from the door. The table is wiped. The books are straightened. The chair is pushed in this time. Everything looks more precise than before. Later, Ethan opens a drawer he has not touched since Clara left. Inside are items he recognizes immediately. Nothing is missing. Nothing is disturbed. He closes the drawer without taking anything out. He does not open it again. Around midday, Ethan notices the quiet has changed texture. It is not heavier. It is flatter. The kind of quiet that fills space without pushing back. He sits near the window, coffee replaced with water now, watching light move across the cabin floor. His phone rests nearby, face down. He does not check it. If you are still here, watching this moment unfold, you already know that nothing dramatic is coming next. And sometimes, the absence of spectacle is the point. Ethan stands and returns to the kitchen. There is one small thing he always does in the afternoon. A habit so ordinary it usually goes unnoticed. Today he pauses before it. His hand hovers, then drops to his side. He does not do it. The moment passes. The cabin does not react. The day continues. As evening approaches, Ethan prepares a simple meal. He eats slowly, then stops before the plate is empty. He leaves the rest, not because he has lost his appetite, because he no longer feels the need to finish it. When the light fades, the cabin settles again. Ethan sits where he sat the night before. The routine has carried him through another day, but something about it has shifted. Not enough to name, not enough to confront, just enough to be noticed. And as the evening holds, a question forms quietly beneath the surface, waiting for the routine to fail before it demands an answer. The day begins with a sound that does not belong. It is faint, brief, almost easy to dismiss. Ethan pauses mid-motion, one hand resting on the back of the chair. The sound does not repeat. He waits a second longer than necessary, then continues as if nothing has happened. Outside, the morning is clear. He steps onto the porch, pulls his coat tighter, and walks the path he shortened yesterday. Today, he does not turn back early. He goes farther, past the point where he stopped before, until the ground changes beneath his feet. He slows, not because he is tired, because he has reached a place that feels familiar for the wrong reason. Ethan stands there, looking out, as if expecting something to arrive. Nothing does. He turns back. Inside the cabin, the kettle goes on again. Steam lifts, soft and patient. Ethan pours water, sets the cup down, then forgets it for a moment. When he remembers, the coffee has cooled slightly. He drinks it anyway. He opens a window for air, then closes it again. The room holds its temperature. The quiet remains flat. Midday passes without announcement. Ethan organizes the shelves with care. He aligns edges, adjusts spacing. When he finishes, the shelves look complete, almost intentional. He steps back, considering them, as if someone else might notice the difference. No one does. A knock comes later. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to interrupt the rhythm. Ethan does not answer immediately. He looks toward the door, then away, then back again. When he opens it, a delivery driver stands outside, holding a small package. The name on the label is his. Only his. Ethan signs. The door closes. The cabin settles again. For a moment, it looks like this is the interruption the day has been building toward. The package sits on the table, unopened, present. Ethan leaves it there. He prepares food and eats standing up, never sitting fully. The light shifts across the floor. The afternoon stretches. At some point, he realizes the package has not drawn his attention the way he expected it to. He picks it up, turns it over once, then sets it down again. The papers inside feel heavier than they look. The interruption was not what mattered. Later, Ethan notices something else. A habit he thought he had abandoned returns without effort. He finds himself reaching for it automatically, then stopping halfway through. The movement feels familiar enough to continue, unfamiliar enough to resist. He lets his hand fall. The cabin holds the moment without comment. If you're still watching, still listening, you might think this is the part where understanding arrives. That the pattern has been revealed. That the answer is waiting inside the package, or behind the knock, or somewhere just out of frame. It is not. The truth is smaller. Ethan sits by the window as evening approaches, watching light thin and stretch. He does not open the package. He does not discard it either. The routine adjusts around. The interruption absorbs it, moves on. And that is the part that does not fit. Because routines are meant to stabilize, not to conceal. As the cabin darkens, Ethan turns on a single lamp. He remains where he is, still, attentive, as if listening for a sound that may or may not come. If this moment feels quiet, it is because it is meant to be shared. Stories like this do not ask for reactions. They ask for presence. The day ends without resolution. And in that unfinished space, a question forms that no routine can answer, even as it pretends everything is under control. The package remains where Ethan left it. Not ignored, not forgotten, simply unaddressed. Morning arrives with a steadier light today, brighter along the edges of the cabin, as if the world outside has decided to move forward without checking whether he is ready. Ethan notices the change and adjusts nothing. He does not open the package. Instead, he moves the table. Not far, just enough that the light no longer falls across it the same way. The room shifts subtly. The package now sits in shadow. This is not avoidance. It is arrangement. Ethan makes coffee and sits this time. He drinks it slowly, pausing between sips as if listening for something beneath the ordinary sounds of the cabin. There is nothing there. He finishes the cup and leaves it where it is. Outside, the wind has changed direction. He steps onto the porch, takes in the air, then closes the door behind him. He walks the path again, farther than yesterday, farther than the day before. His pace is even, intentional. Anyone watching might assume this is progress. It is not. Ethan stops where the ground opens slightly, where the view stretches wider than before. He stands there, hands in his pockets, shoulders set, as if expecting clarity to arrive with distance. It is not. He turns back without hesitation. Inside the cabin, the shelves he aligned yesterday catch his attention again. He notices a gap where something once stood. He reaches for the space, then stops. Whatever belonged there has already been removed. Not recently, deliberately. The assumption was that something was missing. It is not. Ethan moves through the afternoon with efficiency that feels earned rather than forced. He cleans what does not need cleaning. He straightens what is already straight. When he finishes, the cabin looks prepared for something that is not scheduled. He checks the door. It is locked. The package still sits untouched. At some point, he picks it up, carries it to another room, and sets it down again. Not closer, not farther, just elsewhere. If this were a story about answers, this would be the moment they begin to surface. The interruption would lead somewhere. The package would reveal its purpose. The routine would crack. Instead, the opposite happens. The routine absorbs everything. Late in the day, Ethan realizes something that changes the shape of the moment. The thing he thought he was resisting is no longer the problem. He is not waiting to open the package. He is deciding whether opening it would matter. He leaves it closed. As evening settles, Ethan prepares a meal with the same care as always. He sets the table. He sits. He eats the entire portion this time, then washes the plate immediately. No pause. No hosetaschen. The cabin is quiet in a way that feels managed. If you've stayed with this story so far, you might believe this is stability. That Ethan has found his footing. That the routine is working. That assumption is convenient. It is also incomplete, because stability does not require control. And tonight, control is doing more work than it should. Ethan turns off the lights one by one, leaving the cabin dim but orderly. He does not look back at the table. He does not check the door again. The package remains unopened in the other room. The day ends without disruption, and that is precisely the problem. The answer arrives without ceremony. It does not come from the package. It does not come from the door or the phone or the quiet. It comes from something Ethan does not expect to notice at all. The morning begins the same. Light, kettle, measured coffee. He sits. He finishes the cup. He stands. And then he realizes the routine has stopped asking him anything. It does not resist. It does not interrupt. It does not require adjustment. It simply works. That is the shock. Ethan had assumed the routine was holding him together because he needed it. That it was effort, discipline, intention. He had believed the work was happening inside the repetition. It is not. The routine works because it has become automatic, because it no longer depends on attention. He sees it clearly now. The question he thought he was avoiding is not hidden inside the unopened package. It is not waiting for the right moment. It is already being bypassed. Outside, the air is milder. Ethan walks the path again, steady, unhurried. He reaches the wide point and does not stop. He keeps going, then turns back at a place that feels arbitrary, chosen for no reason other than convenience. Back in the cabin, he prepares food earlier than usual. He eats at the table. He finishes the plate. He washes it immediately. Everything moves forward without friction. This is the answer people usually look for. Function. If you're watching closely, you might think this is relief. That Ethan has crossed some invisible line and found balance on the other side. That the days ahead will now stack neatly, one after another. That belief would make sense. It would also be wrong, because what Ethan has learned is not how to heal. It is how to proceed without healing. He opens the drawer again, the one he closed days ago. He takes out a single item this time and places it on the table. It does not change the room. It does not demand attention. It simply exists. The logic becomes unavoidable. If the routine can carry him without asking questions, then the questions are no longer urgent. And if the questions are not urgent, they can wait indefinitely. That is the new problem. Later in the afternoon, Ethan picks up the package. He weighs it in his hands. He considers opening it, then sets it down once more. Not because he is afraid of what is inside, because he has realized it might not change anything. The routine has already decided how the day will go. As evening approaches, Ethan turns on the lamp earlier than usual. He sits in the chair and does nothing for a long moment. No organozing, no adjusting, just stillness. If you have stayed with this story, you might feel the urge to see what happens next. To see the moment where everything breaks open and becomes clear. Stories like this rarely give that when you expect it. What they offer instead is a choice that does not announce itself. Ethan stands and turns off the lamp. The room darkens, orderly and calm. He does not open the package. He does not put the item back in the drawer either. He leaves it where it is. The routine has answered part of the question. He can continue. What has not answered is whether continuing like this will cost him something he will not notice until it is gone. The cabin settles for the night, efficient and quiet. And somewhere beneath the smooth surface of the day, a new tension forms, not from instability, but from the ease with which everything now moves forward. The call comes in the afternoon, not during the quiet hours, not late enough to be ignored. Ethan hears the phone vibrate where he left it, face down on the table. The sound is brief, controlled. He does not reach for it immediately. He finishes what he is doing first, sets a glass down, then turns the phone over. The screen lights the cabin. He answers without greeting. The voice on the other end is measured, professional, familiar enough to not require names. There are pauses where there should not be, words chosen carefully as if to avoid something breaking. Ethan listens. Nothing in his posture changes, but the room does. When the call ends, he remains standing, phone still in his hand. He does not check the time. He does not sit. He looks toward the window, then away. The routine does not resume. That is new. Ethan sets the phone down and moves through the cabin slowly, as if recalibrating his sense of distance. He opens a cabinet he does not need to open. He closes it again. He adjusts the chair, then stops halfway and leaves it misaligned. The decision he made days ago, the one that allowed everything to move smoothly, has reached beyond the cabin now. It has found him where routine cannot buffer it. This was not something money could pause. He prepares food out of habit, then realizes he is not hungry. The plate sits untouched longer than usual. When he does eat, he stops halfway through and leaves the rest without noticing. Outside, the light is fading earlier than expected. The air feels heavier, not colder, just resistant. Ethan steps onto the porch and stays there, hands at his sides, breathing shallow and even. This is not a crisis. It is worse than that. It is consequence. Inside again, Ethan opens the drawer and looks at the item he placed on the table the night before. It has not moved. He considers putting it back, then leaves it where it is. The order he has built no longer protects it. The phone vibrates again. This time, he answers immediately. The words are shorter now, less careful. There is mention of timelines. of expectations that have shifted, of patience that has run out. Ethan says very little. When the call ends, he lowers the phone slowly and rests it on the table, face down. He does not pick it up again. The cabin feels smaller. Not physically, structurally. The routines that once gave the day shape now feel exposed, like scaffolding left in place after the building has failed inspection. Useful, but insufficient. If you have stayed with this story, you might recognize this moment. Not as collapse, but as the instant safety disappears. When doing nothing becomes a choice with weight. Ethan moves through the evening without adjusting the lights. He leaves the lamp off. He sits in the dimness, shoulders squared, eyes focused on a point that does not move. The option to return to how things were is gone. Not because he refuses it, because it no longer exists. The decisions made in quiet have reached beyond this cabin, beyond the routine, beyond the illusion that stability could be maintained indefinitely. As night settles, Ethan remains where he is. He does not prepare for tomorrow. He does not undo what has been done. If this story holds your attention, it is not because something dramatic has happened. It is because something irreversible has. And from this point forward, nothing that follows can be treated as temporary. The cabin settles around him, unchanged. Ethan does not. Morning does not wait for decisions. Light enters the cabin in narrow bands, cutting across the floor where Ethan sat through most of the night. He stands slowly, as if testing whether the day will allow him to move without choosing yet. It is not. The phone is where he left it, face down, silent. He turns it over and sees what he expected to see. Messages stacked without urgency, each one asking for clarity without offering it. Ethan does not answer. He makes coffee and drinks it standing. The taste is familiar. The effect is not. The routine moves forward, but it no longer carries him. It requires direction now. He opens the drawer and removes the item he has been avoiding. He sets it on the table, then sits across from it. For the first time, he stays there long enough to notice the weight of the choice pressing in from both sides. If he leaves the cabin, he returns to a world that has already adjusted its expectations. He will be useful again, effective, protected by systems that know his name and his value. If he stays, the cost continues to accumulate. Quietly, without witnesses. Neither option offers relief. Outside, the air is clear. Ethan steps onto the porch and looks out, not searching for signs, not waiting for confirmation. The view has not changed. The path remains open. The cabin remains where it is. He could go. He does not. Inside, he gathers a few things and places them neatly by the door. Not packed, not staged, just enough to acknowledge that leaving is possible. He does not add to the pile. He does not remove anything either. The phone vibrates again. Ethan answers this time. The voice is direct now. The patience has thinned. There is an expectation that this call will result in movement, one way or another. Ethan listens without interrupting. When he speaks, his words are brief, clear, incomplete. The call ends without resolution. He sets the phone down and remains standing, hands still resting on the edge of the table. The item he placed there catches his eye again. It does not accuse him. It does not reassure him. It waits. If you're still here, still listening, you might expect a decisive moment. A clear turn. A line crossed. Stories like this rarely give those clean edges. Ethan moves through the afternoon slowly, intentionally. He eats when he remembers to. He drinks water without sitting down. He adjusts nothing that does not need adjustment. By evening, the light has thinned again. The cabin feels held together by habit alone. Ethan stands near the door and considers the pile he made earlier. He does not add to it. He does not take anything away. He leaves it exactly as it is. This is the choice. Not to leave. Not to stay. To accept that either direction will cost him something he cannot measure yet. He turns off the lights one by one, leaving the cabin dim and orderly. He does not prepare for departure. He does not erase the possibility either. If you have stayed with this story, it is because moments like this feel familiar. The kind where no option feels right, but waiting feels worse. Ethan sits down and lets the evening settle around him. Tomorrow will require movement. Tonight only asks that he acknowledge there is no perfect way forward, and that whatever he chooses next he will have to live with what he leaves behind. Morning breaks without permission. Light enters the cabin decisively this time, not tentative like before. It finds the table first, then the chair, then the object Ethan left out overnight. The room looks arranged, not staged. Prepared, not resolved. Ethan stands where he slept, already awake. He does not stretch. He does not check the phone. He moves as if the order of the day has already been set. He sits at the table and pulls the object closer. There is no ceremony, no pause for meaning. He opens it. Inside are papers he recognizes immediately. Not new, not unexpected, the kind that carry weight simply by existing. He reads only the first page, then the last. That is enough. The truth is not what he feared. It is simpler. Staying here has consequences that cannot be managed quietly anymore. Ethan reaches for the phone. This time, he does not hesitate. The call connects quickly, as if the other side has been waiting. He speaks first. His voice is steady, measured, free of urgency. He does not explain. He does not negotiate. He states what he will do next. There is a pause, then another. When a response comes, it is not resistance. It is acknowledgement. The decision lands where it should. Ethan ends the call and sets the phone down, screen facing up this time. He does not turn it away. He does not protect himself from it. The action cannot be undone. Outside, the air has shifted again. He steps onto the porch and looks out, taking in the view without searching for reassurance. The path is still there. The cabin stands unchanged. The world beyond, it has already begun to adjust. Inside, Ethan moves through the cabin one final time with attention that feels different from routine. He does not clean. He does not organize. He simply touches what needs to be touched. The back of the chair, the edge of the counter, the door frame. He gathers the papers and places them neatly inside the package. He seals it. This time, he sets it by the door. The truth no longer needs to be hidden. If you have followed this story, you may have expected anger, relief, or collapse. Instead, there's something quieter and heavier. Finality. Ethan sits down and allows the silence to settle fully. No scaffolding, no buffet, just a fact of what has been done. The cabin feels larger now, not safer, more exposed. He looks toward the place where another presence once shaped the space. The absence does not accuse him. It does not console him either. It simply exists alongside the consequence. As the afternoon advances, messages arrive. He reads none of them. He knows what they will say. He has already answered the only question that mattered. The choice he avoided by staying has been made without leaving, and there will be no return to how things were. When evening comes, Ethan turns on a single light and sits beneath it. The glow is steady, unforgiving, honest. This is the moment everything after will have to answer to. Not because something dramatic happened, but because something irreversible did. And whatever comes next will no longer be about routine or retreat or waiting. It will be about living inside the truth he is finally allowed to surface. The morning arrives without urgency. Light settles across the cabin as it always has, tracing familiar lines along the floor and the walls. Nothing looks different at first glance. The table is where it was. The chair is still tucked in. The package remains by the door. Ethan wakes and sits up, not immediately, but without resistance. The night has passed. The decision remains. He stands and moves through the cabin with a steadiness that does not belong to routine anymore. The kettle goes on. The water heats. He pours the coffee and sits this time, not to rest, but to begin. There is no checklist, no sequence to follow. He drinks slowly and notices the quiet has changed again. It is no longer something to manage. It simply exists. Outside, the air is clear. Ethan steps onto the porch and pauses, not because he is deciding where to go, but because he understands where he is. The path is still open. The cabin still holds its shape. The day does not demand more than attention. He returns inside and gathers the things he set aside yesterday. Not everything, only what needs to move. He places them near the door, alongside the package. The arrangement feels complete without being final. Ethan opens the door and carries the package outside. He does not look back when he sets it down in the place he chose. He does not adjust it for symmetry. He leaves it where it lands. This is not closure. It is placement. Inside again, the cabin feels different without changing. The space no longer waits. It holds. Ethan moves through the rooms one last time, not to inspect, but to acknowledge. The edge of the counter, the back of the chair, the quiet that has followed him from room to room. He sits by the window and watches the light advance. He does not reach for the phone. He does not open messages. He knows the rhythm beyond the cabin has already begun to reorganize itself. That world will continue. So will this one. If you have stayed with this story, it may feel incomplete. There is no reunion, no resolution offered, no reassurance delivered at the end. That is intentional. Some endings do not close. They reorder. Ethan stands and straightens the chair he left out of place days ago. He wipes the table once, then stops. There is no second pass. The routine is still available to him. He understands that now. It is a tool, not a shelter. He turns off the lights and leaves one on, not because the room needs it, but because he does. When evening arrives, Ethan sits where he has been sitting all week. The cabin settles around him, not as a refuge, but as a structure that can hold what comes next. There is no promise made to himself, no plan declared, only the acceptance that what he chose cannot be undone, and what remains will require him to stay present without protection. If this moment resonates, it is because it mirrors something familiar. The place where answers are replaced by responsibility, where comfort gives way to clarity. The day ends without ceremony. The cabin stands. Ethan remains. And a new order, quieter and more demanding than the last, begins to take shape. If you found yourself here, still listening, it is because stories like this do not rush their endings. They allow you to arrive at them. Thank you for staying.